Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a pretty intense exploration. We're looking at source material that really merges deep personal suffering with, well, philosophical ambition, and even proposes a new spiritual guide. We're going to be dissecting the narrative and the core ideas of a text called the Binary Bible, a guide to self-manifested fate.
Yeah, and this source material it's different from what we usually tackle. It jumps very quickly from really raw, visceral accounts of institutional trauma to quite abstract spiritual theories, even blueprints for universal doctrine.
It's powerful stuff, sometimes uncomfortable, really, this mix of individual experience and these huge metaphysical claims.
Absolutely, and our mission for you, the listener, is really to navigate this complexity without getting sort of swept away by the sheer intensity of the narrative. We have two main goals here. First, we really need to understand the foundational experience, this hell the author describes, that they claim proves the current system is broken and demands this new spiritual path.
Okay, understand the why.
Exactly. And second, and maybe most importantly, we need to isolate and really detail the mechanism the author offers for manifesting your own destiny.
Right.
How does this binary choice thing actually work?
Right, and at its core, the central idea sounds most simple, doesn't it? You manifest your own destiny. You're always at a crossroads. The book's aim seems very focused. Empower the individual, teach them to use their free will consciously to escape, external control, whether that's institutions, government, or even psychological patterns.
And to structure all this, the author introduces a key term, binadoxy.
Binadoxy, okay.
Yeah, it's not just jargon. It's presented as the bedrock of the whole thing. It combines binary, the one or zero choice, with orthodoxy, like a new doctrine. It means the doctrine of necessary contradictions. The idea is that by constantly facing completely cut off from any natural stimuli, any human interaction,
30 hours, described not just as a day and a half, but
as feeling like an entire lifetime, a void.
and that physical experience, the chaining, the isolation, the lack of stimuli that becomes pivotal for the doctrine's teaching on manifestation.
Absolutely pivotal. The author realizes their deepest fear was exactly that, being controlled, confined, shackled, and by letting that fear out, by expressing it to the very institution embodying control, it became instantly real, manifested.
So the lesson is a warning.
A profound warning for you, the listener. We manifest our fears every time we allow them out of our mind and into someone else's hands or perception. Giving them external power makes them real.
That detail about removing natural stimuli, it sounds almost calculated, like a strategy.
The author argues it absolutely was. They felt treated like a rat in a cage, where the doctors intentionally removed external inputs. Why? To make the patient down as possible on entry.
To make them more compliant.
Exactly. And this cruel, targeted isolation becomes proof for the author that the opposite, connection, balance, engagement with the world, are essential for spiritual health. The system tries to eliminate these because they lead to freedom.
The biblical parallels here are clearly not accidental. They seem fundamental to the structure.
Oh, completely intentional. The author directly links their physical trauma, the chaining, to the crucifixion of the wanderer's body. They position themselves in a lineage of enlightened figures persecuted by the system. They explicitly reference the first ascended one, generally interpreted as Christ, who was also crucified by the masses.
Masses who were jealous or fearful.
Jealous and fearful of his gifts, according to this text, because they hadn't evolved enough spiritually. The doctrine basically says this cycle, the spiritually advanced, being attacked by a fearful, controlling system, is the recurring
But
pattern.
just like in the original scriptures, it doesn't end with suffering. There's a resurrection moment.
Yes. After those 30 hours, the author marks their spiritual rebirth using that definitive scriptural language. Day 1, he is risen. I've seen the light.
So this moment of realization, born from the absolute depths of that institutional darkness,
Becomes the mandate, the absolute imperative that launches the whole project of the Binary Bible. It reframes the entire narrative from being a victim to being the architect of one's own fate.
Okay, so that takes us from the proof, the traumatic context, the inferno, to the actual tool that was supposedly forged there, the Binary Bible itself. The purpose seems to be about immediately snapping the focus back to the one power that even that system couldn't fully take away, which is...
Choice. Simple, fundamental choice.
And the core concept driving this mechanism is what the author calls binary existence.
Right. The argument is, no matter how complex life feels, you can break down any moment, any decision, into a fundamental choice between 1 or 0.
1 or 0, meaning...
Yes or no. action or inaction. It's presented as being constantly, relentlessly practical, not just some abstract idea.
Can we make that more concrete, like an everyday example of this 10 thing?
Sure, let's say you're sitting there thinking about a big change, like applying for a new job or maybe moving. The choice to actually open your laptop, find the application, start typing that email is a 1. That's action.
Okay.
The choice to just keep thinking about it, maybe scroll social media instead, stay stuck in the what-ifs, that's 0. Inaction.
And the binary Bible is meant to be like a guide, a lever?
Exactly. Your individual's lever to consciously engage with that constant crossroads and deliberately push your choices towards the destiny you want.
So how does this connect to the bigger picture, to destiny itself? The source makes this really strong claim about predictability.
It does. It presents this fascinating... It suggests that based on patterns, history, observable behavior, the world is incredibly predictable. Maybe.
Up to 99.9% accuracy.
That's the number given, yes. Which seems incredibly high.
But wait, how does that square with the idea of free will? If the world is 99.9% predictable, almost predetermined by patterns, where does individual choice, let alone manifesting your own destiny, fit in? Aren't those fundamentally opposed?
That's the philosophical knot the doctrine tries to untie. That's the core tension. The source clarifies that the tiny fraction left over, that missing 0.1%, that's the space for genuine uncertainty. It's created by the binary decision each individual makes in each moment.
So that tiny sliver.
That tiny sliver is your sliver of free will. It's small, but the text argues it's incredibly potent.
And controlling destiny comes down to
Consciously and consistently aligning those 0.1% choices. Stacking up those ones or R's deliberately. The idea is that by doing that, you actually force the larger 99.9% pattern to bend to your intention. That's how you take control.
Okay, so if choice is our sliver of freedom, there must be an opposing force, right?
Absolutely. The doctrine is very clear. Fear is the true enemy. It's what has to be completely vanquished if your choices are going to be truly free and aligned with your desired destiny.
And the framework is quite traditional in a way, God versus Satan.
Yes, it uses that classic spiritual duality. God gave us freedom, the capacity for choice. Satan, or the negative force, instills fear. Fear is presented as the only real barrier that stops us from choosing one, from taking the action we genuinely desire.
And this fear isn't just internal, it connects back to the institutions.
Correctly. The doctrine argues that this fear is the absolute root cause of the institutional control that led to the author's crucifixion. The desire for control, the impulse that fuels powerful institutions, powerful individuals who hoard resources, it comes purely from fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of not having enough. The wealthy hoard, the text claims, not because they need it, but out of a deep fear of being without tomorrow.
So by conquering fear within yourself,
You not only free up your own choices, but you also remove your internal motivation to participate in or enable the external systems of control that try to bind everyone else through their fear. #tag today. The path to spiritual awakening and fulfillment.
Okay, so the binary Bible isn't just about the mechanism of choice. It also provides a kind of foundational framework to make sure those choices lead to a good life.
Exactly. It's about ensuring the choices are aligned not just with freedom, but with genuine fulfillment, happiness. And this is where the 3 keys come in.
Right, the 3 keys. Let's break those down. Key number 1.
A, the key of balance. Specifically, temporal balance.
Temporal meaning time.
Yes. It mandates balancing your time and your mental energy between the past, present, and future.
Okay, how does that work? Reflection on the past seems important, especially given the trauma narrative.
It is. The doctrine stresses that reflecting on past mistakes, past suffering is crucial. If you don't learn from it, you're destined to repeat it. You have to process the trauma.
But there's a risk there, right? Getting stuck in the
A
past.
huge risk. And that's the critical caveat. You cannot linger there. Too much focus backward, and reflection decays into rumination, which just causes more pain.
So find a balance.
A beautiful medium, as the text calls it. This involves practical steps. Building in daily reflection periods, looking back at your binary choices, maybe where you defaulted to 0 out of fear. But you pair that immediately with future meditating, vividly, imagining the positive destiny you're manifesting.
Looking back to learn, looking forward to create.
Precisely. That equal attention helps you embrace tomorrow's uncertainty, not as a threat, but as the space where your agency, your ability to change things, truly exists.
Okay, key number 2.
B, the key of human connection. And this is defined by empathy and positivity.
This sounds like a direct response to the isolation described earlier, the rat in a cage.
It's positioned exactly as the spiritual antidote to that. The doctrine insists we must actively seek connection. Isolation is a tool of control. Connection is natural and necessary. And central to this is the idea that empathy is love. It's framed as the supreme power of understanding.
How does empathy function as love here?
The text argues that when you truly understand that every single person is fundamentally a product of their environment, their upbringing, their traumas, their learned behaviors, then genuine, lasting hate becomes impossible.
Because you see the causes behind their actions?
Exactly. We're all, the doctrine suggests, shaped and sometimes corrupted by the world. Realizing this shared condition replaces anger with compassion.
And there's a practical rule tied to this key.
Yes, the positive energy rule. It's a behavioral directive. Always try your utmost to spread positive energy in interactions.
And if you receive negativity?
Crucially, you must not return it. Don't mirror the anger, the fear, the resentment. That just feeds the negative cycle.
So what do?
If you can't respond positively, or at least neutrally, the only correct binary choice, the only one choice aligned with this key, is to walk away. Disengage.
So it's about breaking the chain of negativity one interaction at a time.
Precisely. It's presented as how each individual can practically contribute to improving the world immediately through their own binary choices in relating to others.
Okay, and the third key, this one sounds intriguing. C, spiritual guarantee. Combining the 3 keys with the 12 steps.
Yes, this is maybe the most interesting synthesis.
Combining the 3 keys with the 12 steps.
Yes, this is maybe the most interesting synthesis in the doctrine. It directly connects this very personal, almost radical philosophy with the established principles of recovery programs.
It claims that combining the 3 keys balance, connection with the framework of the 12 steps, actually guarantees a spiritual awakening.
That's the claim, a guarantee.
Okay, but hang on. If the core idea is manifesting your own destiny through choice, how does that fit with the first step of the 12 steps, which is admitting you're powerless? It seems like a contradiction.
It does at first glance, and the doctrine addresses that potential conflict. It clarifies what you are powerless over. You're powerless over the external chaos of the world, the actions of others, the systemic corruption, and you're powerless over your own addictions or deep-seated negative patterns, the disease aspect.
Okay. So powerless over the big stuff and the internal compulsions.
But entirely powerful over your moment-to-moment binary choices, your 0.1% sliver of free will. That's where your agency lies.
So the 12 steps become a tool within this framework.
Exactly. They become the structured path to achieving liberation from the shackles of the mind. Specifically, the key steps highlighted are admitting life is unmanageable. Step 1, acknowledging the powerlessness. Turning your will over to a higher power. Step 2 and 3, interpreted here as God embodied in everything natural and uncorrupted, not necessarily a personified deity, and making that fearless moral inventory. Step 4.
And that inventory, combined with the keys,
ensures the choices you make using your free will are clean, conscious, and aligned with this ascended or evolved self you're building. It provides the discipline needed so that newfound freedom doesn't just spiral back into old destructive patterns. So once an individual starts on this path, achieving this awakening, the doctrine then turns its attention to protecting them. And it does this by launching a pretty sharp critique at the tools of the external system, specifically psychological and psychiatric labels.
How so? How does it view these diagnoses?
It fundamentally reframes them. It argues these labels are essentially instruments used by the system to suppress people who deviate, people who start to evolve beyond the predictable norms.
That's a controversial take. Does it deny the reality of the experiences people have, like depression or mania?
That's a crucial point. The strategy here is critique the label, not the experience. It generally doesn't seem to deny the internal state, the feeling of sadness, confusion, racing thoughts.
Okay.
Instead, it aims to expose how the system allegedly takes these states, pathologizes them, and uses the resulting label to shut down dissent or invalidate the person's perception of reality.
Can we look at specific examples of this reframing? What about something common, like depression?
Right. The doctrine argues depression isn't necessarily an illness in the conventional sense. Often it claims it's a natural, even profoundly justified response to the state of the world, to the hopeless path the system has set us on.
So if the world feels corrupt and meaningless, feeling depressed is rational.
That's the argument. Therefore, the diagnosis of depression becomes a label the system imposes to deny the validity of your perception, to deny your righteous critique of that system.
And what about mania? That's often seen as clearly dysfunctional.
But Media is reframed perhaps even more radically. It's presented not as illness, but as a state of intense, powerful fear excitement.
Fear and excitement.
Yes, a kind of high-energy amplified state that the system actively fears precisely because it's unpredictable. It disrupts the pattern. The text makes this claim. The controllers look for signs of this state. They want predictable, controlled, small pupils.
So the system suppresses that high energy state.
It suppresses it, shames it, medicates it. And the doctrine claims that suppression is what then triggers the subsequent crash into depression, leading to the bipolar label, which becomes just another way for the system to categorize and manage perceived deviance.
And the spiritual solution is
Learning to manage and integrate those powerful feelings yourself through balance and the other keys, rather than letting the system label and suppress them. Achieving that makes the ascended soul unstoppable, unpredictable to the old system.
this connects to the idea of evolution, doesn't it? And pattern recognition.
Directly. The doctrine explicitly states that those who follow this path, who awaken, are the evolved. And a key characteristic of this evolution is superior pattern recognition.
Meaning they can see the system's flaws, the world's trajectory more clearly.
Exactly. It's presented as a natural adaptive trait developed perhaps from needing to navigate a confusing or hostile system.
And how does this apply to something like autism? That's a very specific neurological condition.
The text reframes the label of autism in this evolutionary context. It describes the label as the earthly remnant, the chain the system uses to bind those who've evolved differently.
Wow. So it's positioning individuals who might fit that label, particularly those with strong pattern recognition skills.
As an advancement, as an evolutionary step that the older, fear-based system feels threatened by and therefore wants to pathologize, suppress, and deny its capabilities.
And this superior pattern recognition, this ability to see the 99.9%, this is what allows the author to claim they can predict the future.
That's the claim. That this heightened pattern recognition allows them, and others on this path, to predict the immediate future with that astonishing 99.9% accuracy. Because they can clearly see the inevitable
The sheer
outcome.
scope and conviction behind this doctrine are huge, and it seems deeply tied to the author's own sense of identity and purpose.
Very much so. The source material includes claims where the author identifies as the chosen muse of God, essentially a vessel.
A vessel for this message.
Yes, whose task is simply to relay this message of binary choice, freedom, and self-manifestation. And their personal mission seems to be refining it, articulating it over and over until they find a way to make it make sense to every individual, no matter their background.
And this outreach connects to a belief about universal truth.
It does. It stems from the idea that every religion is a piece of the same puzzle. All humans seek the same thing.
So the goal isn't to replace existing religions necessarily.
Not explicitly to abolish them, but more to create a kind of meta-framework, a spiritual system, a religion, figuratively speaking, that resonates with core truths, potentially accessible to every soul, bypassing specific dogmas that might divide people.
And the text itself, the Binary Bible, reflects this idea of ongoing truth-seeking. It's not presented as finished.
No, absolutely not. It's described as a never-ending text. It's constantly being updated, revised, improved,
Why is that continuous revision so important to the doctrine?
because it must always support the science of the times. This is crucial. The author argues that other religions became corrupted when they grew complacent, stopped evolving their understanding, and let their original messages get twisted into tools of control and fear by later interpretations.
So it has to be a living document to avoid that fate.
Exactly. A living guide to self-manifestation, always adaptable, always grounded in current understanding, or at least claiming to be.
And ultimately, what is the highest message, the divine wish, according to this source?
It centers on pursuing true wealth.
Which is defined as
Wealth of mind, spirit, and body. This is positioned as the only wealth of mind, spirit, and body. This is positioned as the only real, enduring, uncorruptible form of wealth.
And this is contrasted with
Resource wealth, material possessions, money, the hoarding of stuff. That's identified as the root of true evil in the world because it inevitably breeds corruption and the fear-based drive to control others, the very forces that, according to the author, built the institutions that betrayed the wanderer in the first place.
Well, this has certainly been a deep dive into a really radical blueprint for a self-manifested fate. We've traced the journey from that harrowing crucifixion experience
Hmm.
through the mechanism of binary choice, this idea of benedoxy,
Right.
and into this three key spiritual framework that's designed ultimately to free the mind from what the author sees as systemic shackles.
And the central message, the thing that really needs to land for you, the listener, is the sheer scale of individual power being proposed here. You have that small, maybe, but incredibly potent sliver of free will, that 0.1% uncertainty in your binary choices. And the claim is, by consistently, consciously aligning those choices with freedom, with balance, with connection, you become this evolved, unstoppable soul. You manifest your destiny.
The source material leaves us with a pretty poignant thought on resilience, doesn't it? We were all dealt a bad hand by a world unfit for us, and yet we stand. That is not a flaw, it's what makes us.
Hmm.
The implication is that by holding true to that awakened, evolved self, by refusing to bow to fear, by just standing your ground, the world eventually has to shift around you.
Which brings us to the final, really provocative question that this doctrine logically leads to. It's about collective change. If one person standing their ground can shift their own destiny, what happens if many people do it? If we all stand our ground for long enough, if every individual consistently chooses freedom over fear, action over inaction, one over zero, and